Hello once again, digital world. Welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. We are firmly getting ready for the big blockbuster season of movies that are coming our way. I'm still reeling from the adrenaline of seeing Fast 10 last week. Overall, as I continue to think about the movie, the more I had so much fun with it. My cats have just pushed their way into the recording room. I apologize in advance. But yeah, starting from this week on, we got plenty of movies coming, and I bought a lot of tickets to a lot of different things, which means I'm going to have to try and remember what week I'm seeing what movie. From tomorrow, we'll be watching and reviewing The Little Mermaid. After that, we've got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, The Flash, Elemental, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Part 1, Haunted Mansion, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, Meg 2, The Trench, Blue Beetle, and that just carries us through to August, and I'm sure I've missed one or two movies on that little list there. So basically, most of the content you'll be seeing on this podcast for a while will be reviews, but I have boxed myself into a corner here because amongst all of that is also the anticipated release of Christopher Nolan's new big film, Oppenheimer, a biopic of Oppenheimer, the man behind the infamous phrase, "I am become death." And I wanted to do like I did with Daniel Craig's James Bond, No Time to Die, where I planned out some episodes beforehand about all of Bond's previous adventures, timing it so it will be done in time to watch and review No Time to Die. As we all know, or maybe you don't know if you haven't listened to anything I've ever done before, which is very possible, that didn't work twice. Thanks COVID, thanks pandemic. Foolishly, I thought, well, why don't we go through the Nolan films, the Christopher Nolan years? We've already talked extensively about the Batman trilogy, so we don't need to do that. But let's talk about Christopher Nolan's early days, his rise up into Hollywood superstardom, and his public perception of his movies, how he tells his movies, the stories, his direction style, all of that stuff. We'll time it perfectly, and we'll get it done before Oppenheimer. But now, as it's been nearly a month, probably even over a month, since we first talked about Memento, the first in our series, we're only a couple months out from Oppenheimer, and with all these movies I've got to review coming up in between, real estate's running out. So, little panic, which means I will be forcing these Christopher Nolan episodes amongst these reviews, which isn't bad. I do want to talk about it. I want to get this done before Oppenheimer hits, which will be ironic if we get there and then I choose to watch Barbie first, which is a strong possibility, and I will not be ashamed if that happens. I do think it's funny that we have a brand new Christopher Nolan movie and a Barbie movie, and genuinely, the whole world is actually like, which one do we see? How could you release both of them on the same day? That's insane. I'm pretty sure Barbie will win, and that may be the one I end up seeing first. So that will be funny if I stress to get all this stuff in and then I don't prioritize watching Oppenheimer. But I also don't think I have enough real estate to do each movie by Christopher Nolan separately. So as we go forward, I think we have room for 3 episodes. If we're lucky. 3 Christopher Nolan specific episodes that we can comfortably do before we get to Oppenheimer. We won't be doing Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. I've already done a whole episode on that trilogy with emphasis on The Dark Knight. So if you're one of those people that's like, oh, he said he'd do Christopher Nolan, but he didn't do the Batman movies. It is on my channel. It is on my Spotify somewhere. Feel free to search it out. But based on what movies are left, actually, I think I might have to do... No, 3 is good. 3 is good. Let's not overthink it too much, Jordan, or we'll be liable to be here forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize a particular movie for each episode, but also do a brief aside to another movie around the time that movie also came out. That sort of fits into what I'm talking about. Because Christopher Nolan's expertise as a filmmaker has evolved over time, especially as he's become more prominent and also a big box office draw. When he started, as I mentioned in Memento, he was this little independent filmmaker that just had really cool ideas and had really interesting ways of telling his stories. Through his early years, as he got more recognition and his movies became more appealing as for general audiences to come and spend their money on that instead of the new Transformers movie that comes out that year or something. The actors involved in his projects got bigger, the runtimes for his movies got longer, the money put into these films got more, and the ambition behind what he was doing became even more intense. Some could argue that that has come at a cost in terms of his storytelling and his filmmaking, where prioritizing ambitious ideas has overwhelmed the ability to tell a good story. Leading me to my point here is that we will also not be talking about Tenet, because I did do a review on that back in 2020. It's got a whole thing on that. And that really is a good closer. If you listen to all these Christopher Nolan episodes I'm doing, go and find that Tenet review that caps it up perfectly in terms of where Christopher Nolan has evolved to, how he currently is in terms of his movie making and his story ideas, and how the general public is receiving them. No one can deny he's ambitious. No one can deny he's got skill. But to engage in his storytelling, in his ideas, to consume it is not for everybody. And I totally get that. But that's a ways away. So what have we said? I'm not talking about Memento because I already did. Not talking about the Dark Knight trilogy, I already did. And I'm not talking about Tenet because I already did. But around the time of Batman Begins, there's some Christopher Nolan movies that we can talk about. And I would lump these movies in still the pre-box office Nolan. The main movie we're going to talk about is The Prestige. I think that's right on the cusp before he exploded. Prestige came out after Batman Begins. Batman Begins 2005, The Prestige is 2006. And while Batman Begins is incredible, great film, great start to Christian Bale's Batman trilogy, it's not an incredibly awesome, fantastic, flawless film. It does set the tone, but The Dark Knight completely encompassed it, ran with it, made it its own thing. And The Dark Knight became such a cultural icon and a big money cash cow, a critically darling film. Heath Ledger wins an Oscar posthumously for his performance as the Joker. So we're not quite at Christopher Nolan is a name known in every house across the land, and his movies are so awesome and so amazing, and they make billions and billions of dollars at the box office. We're not quite there yet. We're on the threshold, but we're not there. Before I talk about The Prestige, though, and in case you're wondering, although you probably shouldn't, because if you clicked on this episode, you know the title, so you know what the main priority is going to be. But we are talking mainly about The Prestige. However, I do want to give a little shout out to Insomnia, another Christopher Nolan film that came out in 2002, which you probably never heard of. Maybe you have, but maybe you didn't know it was a Christopher Nolan film. You would be forgiven for not knowing that. It's an interesting little film. It stars not the usual suspects from a Christopher Nolan film. Our main character is played by Al Pacino. Our villain of the film is played by Robin Williams, of all people. And then you've also got a great performance in here from Hilary Swank to round out this triad of interesting characters in this film. Insomnia is a lot more closer to Memento than The Prestige in terms of ambitiousness in the production value. It's an interesting thriller, but it's a simple idea that takes place in this unique location that relies on, again, the storytelling, the visualness of the atmosphere around the story that's going on, rather than big budget sci-fi concepts. But what's interesting is that people often go through and they rank the Christopher Nolan films and they talk about them. You know, there's like The Dark Knight is the greatest Batman film, the greatest superhero ever made. Inception, action-packed, exciting film. Interstellar, a space odyssey. Dunkirk, an epic war film. Even Memento, the early ones. Memento, interesting psychological thriller thing. The Prestige, all of that. But often Insomnia gets left off the list, I think. Or if it is on there, it's very barely addressed. And I do feel a little bad that I'm saying that while I put it as a side note to this episode. But as I said, it's just out of necessity to clean up real estate for this little Nolan journey. But I think Insomnia is a better reflection of Christopher Nolan's talent and his ambitiousness with his storytelling before his success and his blockbusteriness got away from him. And it also really leans into Christopher Nolan's most effective way of telling stories, which is to use the unreliable narrator. Now, it's something I'll mention a lot in every episode where we talk about Christopher Nolan, but that will pivot in a way, probably more towards another skill he uses, which is using the concept of time to influence how his story is being told. We already did that with Memento, where he tells the story backwards and forwards, and each time you view it, you get a little bit more information that you didn't have before. Later stuff on, you got Inception, where the different layers of dreams have different passing of time that affects what's above and below that layer. Interstellar, literal planets that operate on a different span of time than Earth. Dunkirk, 3 entirely separate storylines evolving over a different paced timeline. One taking an hour, one taking a day, one taking a week. And Tenet itself is literally time as a storytelling device. So that's also in here with Insomnia and with Memento and The Prestige and all that. But less so and more using an unreliable protagonist to influence how we are perceiving the story. In Memento's case, Guy Pearce's character had a brain defect where he couldn't remember things past 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it was. So as soon as he could not keep new memories. He always had his old memories. His new memories, he couldn't keep on. So he used that defect that Guy Pearce had to influence how you as the viewer could learn and understand the movie going forward. The Prestige also does it, but we'll get to that in a sec. For Insomnia, the uniqueness for that is that Al Pacino plays a police officer who flies off to this remote place. I cannot say in America where it is because I don't retain this information. But it's in one of those places where it's, I don't know why it is, if it's so high up or if it's a unique place on the ground. I don't care. But it basically, the sun never really properly goes down in this town. So it's always bright. Hence Insomnia, because when Al Pacino is up there, he's trying to solve this horrific murder that has been occurred. It's very stressful. He's got a lot of baggage from stuff that's happened to him in the past. There's no secret as to who the killer is. It's made very clear early on that Robin Williams did do the crime that Al Pacino was hunting. It's a matter of proving it. But because Al Pacino is straddled with guilt and desperation at solving this case, and also unable to get any sleep because the sun never goes down and lets him turn his brain off, his perception of reality, how he's communicating with other people, the things he's remembering and the things he isn't remembering start to play tricks on him, to a point where it's possibility that Al Pacino himself is even involved in this crime and he just doesn't remember it because of the insomnia, because of his inability to tell reality from fantasy. And that is what Christopher Nolan's storytelling in here really drives, is that you as the viewer, for all intents, really, though, Al Pacino's protagonist is likable, and you are on his side. He's not a bad guy. You just know there's some mystery about him, and then the way he learns information, and the way he talks to other people, and the way they respond to him. Like Hilary Swank is like the core neutral character in here. She's a cop that lives in the place where the crime has been occurred. A rookie cop who's like, I look up to you, Al Pacino. I can't wait to be like you. And then as she learns about the crime, and then she sees Al Pacino's shiftiness, that perception of whether she can trust him or not influences how she engages with him in solving the case. And then you have Robin Williams, who's just completely fucking with everybody. It's a very unique performance from Robin Williams that you will not get in most of his performances. It really shows that we lost an incredibly talented actor when Robin Williams did indeed die. He was not limited to just his awesome comedy and his improvisation skills, even though that's certainly where he shined. When given the opportunity, he could stretch out his acting range. I mean, his performance in Good Will Hunting alone is enough to show you that. But if you want to see a truly messed up, despicable, unsettling Robin Williams, Insomnia is where you're going to get it. I really like Insomnia. I wish I watched it more, and I wish it got more recognition in the Christopher Nolan lineup. But at the end of the day, if you've never heard of it, and you're like, what? I thought I'd seen all the Christopher Nolan films. Check it out. I can't talk too much about it. In many ways, I can't talk about much of the Christopher Nolan films we're about to go into, because I always operate on a sense that people listening to this may not have seen the movie. And I'm not about to spoil the twists, because there's one thing Nolan films have: they are twists. But Insomnia is a great little film, great performances from Al Pacino and Hilary Swank, and Robin Williams, of course. A really unique blurring the lines of what's real and what's fiction, and the desperation a human brain can go through when it doesn't sleep, and when it doesn't have all the information, and when it's hallucinating shit that affects you. It's an engaging watch for sure. Definitely check it out. But what we're mainly talking about here today, and probably controversially is my favorite Christopher Nolan film, is The Prestige. Now, I know that's saying a lot to say it's my favorite film, because I talked about how much I like The Dark Knight. Inception was the movie that really let me know that I think I like all Christopher Nolan work. But I think in terms of... Oh, and Memento too, solid opening act for Nolan. But I think for The Prestige is unique. It is the sweet spot between a Christopher Nolan story and a Christopher Nolan execution. Everything just works perfectly. The characters he introduces, the performances by the actors who play them. The concept is easy to grasp. You know exactly what the deal is, what's going on in the film. But as things progress, there are so many twists, which is appropriate because this is a movie about magicians. Each twist baffles you. Each pivot, characters are not 100% good and bad. Everybody's got good qualities. Everybody's got bad qualities. You don't know exactly who is the character you're supposed to root for at the end of the day, who you think should come out on top, who does come out on top and who doesn't is quite shocking. There's imagery in here. There's revelations that will stick with you long after the movie has ended. There's incredible dialogue. Now, the dialogue is cheesy. The way the dialogue is used in execution with revealing information as well. It's just an incredible film, and not too long either. I love a good long film. I love a good short film. I love movies, though, that are right in the sweet spot, where it sucks you in so much that you forget that time is passing as you're watching it, but doesn't overstay its welcome. Movies like Tenet and Interstellar, I really like. I enjoy watching them, but I'm always aware watching them. Okay, we are getting into the 3-hour mark here. I'm ready to call it a day. So something like The Prestige, which I don't think even comes in at 2 hours. I think it's somewhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours, which is impressive for sure. At the end of the day, when I have all the Christopher Nolan films in front of me, and it's like, which one would you want to watch first? I think I will always pick The Prestige. So that's why I'm really excited to talk about it, sort of. Because again, I don't want to spoil it if you've never seen it. And The Prestige relies on you to have a really good first experience, to not really know what's going to happen. And even then, as you rewatch it, you'll still catch things that you never really caught the first time. There's always layers on layers. There's always, you're watching one hand, but the other hand is doing the magic tricks sort of thing, which is very appropriate for the film. The bare bones of it is about two magicians, one played by Hugh Jackman and one played by Christian Bale, and they're magician rivals. They've had the same mentor. They used to work together, but they've split off into their own callings, and they're both trying to be better than the other one. At the start of the film, you get the sense that Hugh Jackman is the one that you should be rooting for. He seems the more charming, the more pleasant, the more optimistic showman style that he would eventually, I guess, become with The Greatest Showman when he played P.T. Barnum. And Christian Bale is his rival. He's more serious, nasty, doesn't have too many friends, is more focused on one-upping Hugh Jackman and just trying to make money. He's all about making money. Hugh Jackman is about performing the greatest trick, the thing that he will always be remembered, because much like Brendan Gleeson in The Banshees of Inisherin, if you are not remembered after you are dead, then your life was not worth living. So it's very important to him that he is remembered, whether it's for the greatest trick ever pulled or to be the greatest magician of all time. So the movie starts off pleasantly enough. They play their magic tricks. One's always a little bit better than the other. The other one gets annoyed, so tries and does that trick with a little bit more of a spin. Sometimes things get a little out of hand. There's poor bunny rabbits that should never have been pulled out of hats in here. But for the most part, things seem relatively safe. But there's one trick that both of them kind of want to pull off that has never really been pulled off, which is the teleporting man. The idea that a person can step into a box on a stage and then reappear in the rafters in an audience, and people will be like, how did he do it? An incredible idea for a trick, but how do you accomplish it in a way that's believable, that the audience can genuinely think you transported, but allowing with the limitations set during this time. This movie's set in Victorian times. So this before any sort of technology can help you hoodwink the audience. It's all man-made. It's all contraptions and pulley strings and all of that stuff. But then it turns into a real thriller where the magic tricks spill out off the stage and into how Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale interact with each other, trying to get to this trick first before the other one, to a point where they're sabotaging each other in real life, playing tricks on each other in real life that impacts their ability to make money, to operate in the world, their reputation with the police and all of that stuff. Eventually it all comes to a head where the great trick is pulled off by a certain person to a certain degree in a blending of magic and science at the expense of the other magician. But whoa, that other magician may already be ahead just a little bit of the first one, and then there's a darkness behind how this trick is actually pulled off, where you go, Jesus Christ, that's dark. That's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. What I really love about this movie, again, it is the unreliable narrator that Christopher Nolan loves to do. But in this instance, it's not that somebody has a mental defect, whether it's unable to keep memories, or they've lost so much, they haven't been able to sleep for so long that they're hallucinating. In this instance, it's because they are literally magicians, and they are always using sleight of hand. Michael Caine's in this movie. He's like the mentor to both magicians, and he's always talking about their prestige, which is, if I remember correctly, the art of tricking the audience by making you look at one place while right in front of them, out of their eye, the trick is actually being occurred. So it's tricking the audience to a point where they don't even know they've been, something like that. It's a very complicated way of doing it. The prestige is part of the sequence of events a magician does to fool an audience, to get them to look one place while the magic trick is happening somewhere else. Pretty much, yeah. But in this instance, because the magic tricks are not limited to the stage, in terms of Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale's mannerisms, especially Christian Bale, and as I said, it fucks with your ability to understand who's actually a good person, whose intentions are honorable and who are not. So you are constantly flipping between who is honorable, who is not, who's successfully committing a trick first. Oh wait, did the other one already do it 2 scenes ago and we didn't even realize? This scene that we've seen influenced a certain way because of how one magician wants you to see it, and then you get to see it again from the other magician's perspective. It's constantly making you watch one way while the other thing is happening. And that moral ambiguity of these magicians, who both have moments of goodness and moments of sheer shittery, and then evolving to a point where you're just like, what the hell is happening? The lines between reality and fantasy are blurring, but it's never not. It never leans into magic as magic. It never ever tries to make you think that people are actually doing Harry Potter stuff on stage. The essence of science coming into play is that there's a sciencey reason for why this certain trick has been pulled off. It's dark as hell, and it makes you upset. You certainly leave the film not going, ooh, wasn't that a fun time? You'll be disturbed, but you'll be intrigued. You'll wonder what you saw was 100% true to your eyes, or if the rug had been pulled out from under you and hadn't realized it, which is why you can then go back and watch this film many, many times. And much like Memento, where you catch a little bit that you didn't get before, I think The Prestige is constantly rewarding you of new information, new ways of seeing these scenes, new ways of appreciating the characters. Aside from Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson's in here. She's one of those magician's assistances, the pretty lady that stands there and goes, La la la. And of course, because these two magicians are pretty much jealous scum, they both want her to be their lady. So there's a lot of rivalry back and forth in that. David Bowie's in here, one of David Bowie's last performances before he passed away. Andy Serkis in here too. David Bowie plays Nikola Tesla, of all people, and Nikola Tesla's scientific advances and discoveries is a big turning point for the transporting man and the trick and how that is accomplished. And I can't say anything more about that because you do have to watch it. It's very vague, I know, but it's an incredibly engaging film, and it's right on the cusp where Christopher Nolan's ambition is getting big. He's confident that he can tell these stories he wants to tell. He doesn't mind that it's twisty because he keeps it fast paced, and he keeps providing information and entertainment to a point where everybody's having a good time. I think the general quality of The Prestige, combine that with the superhero box office bombastic of Batman Begins. I think the expertise he got from making both of them is what gave us the incredible film that is The Dark Knight. So where are we? We're at 2006 for The Prestige. So we have covered Christopher Nolan's early days, before he was Christopher Nolan. Come see the new movie by Christopher Nolan. When we pick up next time, which should be in a couple of weeks, because I got to fit it in at some point in June, so that we can get this all spaced out nice and lovely before Oppenheimer. When we come back next time is when we talk about Inception. And Inception really kicks things into high gear. Still incredibly good, but that's where we lean more into using time, using big name actors, long running times, extensive use of the landscape of perceiving time and reality and all of that stuff, where your brain fizzles a little bit, but still good. So be sure to tune in for that whenever I drop it. I couldn't tell you when, but it will be at some point in June, somewhere amongst all those reviews that'll be coming for you very, very soon. Otherwise, thank you once again for tuning in to another Christopher Nolan extravaganza. I'll be back in a couple of days to give you my review of The Little Mermaid. If you want a sneak peek, even though I haven't seen it, I have a feeling that I will be kind to it, because I generally am when it comes to these Disney live actions. But I also hope I'm pleasantly surprised, and it's actually pretty damn good. We'll just have to wait and see. But until then, I love and appreciate you as always, and I'll catch you on the next Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos.